I'm pleased to welcome you to this opportunity to view the Stults Road Elementary School's math vertical team. Today they're engaged in one of their learning team meetings with colleagues from each grade level who come together several times during the school year, representing each grade level. Together they will learn about how to improve math problem-solving performance of students at Stults Road. This particular group of teacher leaders acts as its own learning community, representing their grade levels and focusing on how they can learn how to improve teaching and learning in problem solving. Today you'll see them engaged in this opportunity to think together about which strategies are most effective in improving student learning. After they talk about these strategies and share their own experiences with using the strategies, they'll go back into their own grade levels, into their grade level specific learning teams, and share what they're learning as facilitators of professional learning.
Thank you for taking the time to meet for our monthly cadre meeting. You all had a chance to practice retooling in your classroom and to do some reflection amongst one another. But our task today is to share your experiences. I want you to really focus in on that, and I want to hear your reflections on your practice and discover what recommendations we want to make so that we can take back to our grade levels and our departments.
But we'll start with our SMART goal. Our goal simply states that every math teacher in grades K through 6 will utilize district and state released Objective 6 problems and retooled Objectives 1 through 5 problems to increase the level of rigor. Because that is our overall goal, to bump up our problem solving.
Well, before we start anything, we got to figure out why we're doing this. Why do we need to retool? Why do we even need to start that? So I brought some data in for us to look at. What do you notice about kinder through 2nd grade? Just kind of look at that for a minute.
It's building up as they get to 2nd grade.
Okay.
But definitely not at a percentage that we want them at yet.
I find it interesting too. Objective 6 for kindergarten. The district was 96 and Stults Road was 91. So we'll have to look at a later time. The questions that they asked for Objective 6 was the rigor where it needed to be. And so on 1st grade, they're all high. Looking at Objective 6, it's the lowest. Now for 2nd grade here, the district was the lowest for Objective 6, but we were 2nd. It's the 2nd lowest. These two were tied. Okay, interesting. Let's look at.
Ooh. There's a ladder.
No, you can definitely see that. Some of you have data that you brought. You had a unit assessment, and some of you have that to bring to show if the objective that you retooled helped them with Objective 6 problems. So bring that. And then some of you even had a chance to observe each other?
Yes.
Okay, so whenever you guys come up, whenever it's your turn, you can kind of reflect on that as well.
We set the foundation, and so we're really just in this unit starting with introducing problem solving, which is the basis of Objective 6. So what we're trying to do is to really hone in on how these students are learning this process and what strategies we can start to put in place now.
What are you all hearing, looking at the different grade levels and also looking at the whole big picture with the math support? What are you hearing that's very useful?
Writing the number over the word.
Right.
So that's a great strategy, and it's simple, but it's something they can all do. So I wrote it down.
You know what, you also mentioned you were excited to see that she was using manipulatives for all of our learners, particularly our second language learners, how powerful that will be to help facilitate their learning process.
I like your 10 frame, and even as a 3rd grade teacher, maybe my lower students, the ones that are struggling more, they'll like reach back into 1st grade and think, oh, it's just a 10 frame, you know, so I've never tried that before. I want to try a 10 frame. So thanks for sharing that.
No problem.
Stephanie, I really like the way you introduce the problem orally first. We don't see a lot of that happening, and allowing the kids to grapple with it and talk about it. What does this really mean? Because true problem solving does involve students having dialogue about the problem and analyzing each answer choice, proving and disproving answer choices. So that's something we want to see globally.
Second grade, we had an assessment coming up on functions and patterns, and I wanted to retool a question that would be on the test in a basic question and bump up the rigor so that maybe on the assessment they could use the same strategies to figure out other problems.
Talking to Chantel, actually, she kept talking about how there are different levels of learning, which brought me to thinking not only could I have, you know, the individual group and the small group that I'm working with, and also what Victoria was saying, with the manipulatives, I could have a table that's the group that likes the hands-on and another group that just leave me alone. I want to be in my box and solve my problems.
So that taught me I need to look at some of the ways that I'm planning some of these retooling problems, because again, I thought I had an aha, especially with the extra information, and I guess I didn't have the aha, which was a good thing. So I know that group, they paid attention to them saving more money, even they put a box around it, and they knew that was the focus of the question rather than the family saving time. But I thought they would pay attention to that part. So again, Stephanie, that was a good thing that you brought up with the extra information problems.
I was in Lloyd's room, and one thing that I like is that you did ask students for multiple strategies. Before you asked them, okay, how do you think we can solve this? And through that dialogue and that conversation, like you said, when students hear how other students are solving it, then they get ideas and then they extend, and that's kind of what we're doing here today. Another thing you ask is, what will you have to know to solve this problem? That is taking it even deeper, getting their understanding.
It's good to see that everybody's doing the same thing, and then when they get to sixth grade, you can't say you've never seen it, because it's kinder all the way up to sixth grade. You've seen the problem, so you can't say I don't know what I'm doing.
Okay, let's take a look at this problem, and let's talk about, is this problem a high-level task or a low-level task, and why?
It's a 3 to 4 grade level question.
Yeah.
So,
And there's no picture. They have to, if they can't visualize the spinner, they're going to have to draw it or write a table to show how much is red, how much is yellow.
they have to explain and justify their reasoning as well.
Yeah, vocabulary.
All right, so they're justifying their thinking, they're explaining their multiple steps. There's no visual representation, so they have to come up with that on their own. Excellent. What type of math is involved?
Proportion.
Proportions.
Probability.
Probability. So students do have to have a basic conceptual knowledge, but they're taking that on to the next level and making it more cognitive. This research comes from David Molina, and what he says is that if a task is at a low level, students are implementing it at a low level, then student learning will be at a low level. The opposite of that, he says that if the task is set up at a high level, it's being implemented at a high level, then student learning will be at a high level. If the task is set up at a low level, it's being, or say a high level, it's being implemented at a low level, then student learning is moderate. So we want high, high, high across the board. So let's take a look at our low problem, and we're going to retool it. A little bit different. The past few sessions, we've talked about adding extra information. We've talked about adding another step, but we're going to make it a little bit different this time. And then you all are going to work together and retool it based on the way that I show you here. So at this point, everyone has brought a problem for your upcoming unit to retool with your peer coach, and Amber and I will be coming around to assist as well. Let's try to make one similar to this one. Okay, more open-ended, more student-generated.
Use your peer coach partner to help.
Yeah.
They probably didn't know what a ping pong was.
The language.
So the language and the vocabulary kind of tripped them up a little bit.
But do we want them to make their own number?
So they'd have to maybe
Would that be higher level?
But that's adding that visual representation that we talked about.
So that they would have to somehow
Figure out
realize areas to then get them to the formula.
Infer.
What struck me, Shan, was even that you had us writing for a while, but then when I was done, I was like, this is so easy. Not to solve, obviously. I don't know if I could really solve this, but this is so easy to retool a problem. Like, why don't we do it more? You know what I mean? Like, it just takes a few minutes. It's suddenly, you're able to differentiate your class. And so, like, when we go back and talk to our teammates on our grade levels about this, I always am fearful of, people resist change and they don't, but I feel like when we present this in a way where, look, it's easy, guys, it's an extra 2 minutes, it's extra couple questions, and your class is going to be excited.
My goals for myself is, number one, don't assume that the students know the problems that are in the 6th grade material, but always just look at the whole picture for everyone to solve a problem. And another one is to at least have one retooled problem a week. I'm going to start there and then eventually move to more problems and move from 75% Objective 6 to 85% with our district benchmark.
And also for a 4th grade team goal is to look at the list that Shan provided us with, the make problem a high level, a low level task list. And as my team is writing those goals, are we looking just at multiple strategies when we're writing these problems? Are we looking just at solutions that represent different ways to solve a problem? So what specifically are we looking at that sheet that Shan provided us? And also to make it measurable for students, maybe 90% or higher, reach that mastery level, for example, multiple strategies.
For myself, I would really like to reach all of my students at all their different learning levels. I mean, we've talked about visually, auditory, verbally, any of those levels. I really want to be able to meet that need for them. So for myself, and then for my grade level, I think our Objective 6 was pretty low, but I have high expectations for our grade level, and 49% for us is just unacceptable. So I said bump it up to at least 70%, just to get make sure that we're getting this in, and I think the retooling has and will be especially effective.
So what are some of the key instructional process that we have in place?
Well, I just want to take her KHDU DCM. I've never seen that before. And I'm going to take it and use it in 3rd grade science, because they don't get metric system at all. And maybe we're not going to be moving decimal points anywhere, but just to have that kilo, hecto.
We have an acronym that we actually use, and then they can come up with their own.
I also heard a common amongst all of us, tailoring our instruction based on how the students are responding.
One thing I heard were the resources that you all are using. It seems like everyone pretty much used problems from previous tests, previous benchmarks that students struggled on.
Plus, I think if we keep going into each other's classrooms, it'll just help maintain that consistency across the board as far as strategies go.
Vocabulary is going to be key because,
The input and the output that we discussed.
Right, I had
the same across
no
all
idea.
grade levels.
And to further differentiate instruction, we really want to pull in the visual representations, oral, auditory, kinesthetic. I'm really big on visual though.
There's two aspects that I kept hearing, as whole group versus small group.
A high, low, medium at each table so that everybody can teach or learn from each other, not just all the high students in one area and all the low.
What's most powerful to me at this point, we are making decisions based on how the students are responding to our teaching. And as we're formulating our common list and our plan as we move forward, what a better way to do that with how the students are responding to the learning.
I want to thank the Stults Road Elementary School Math Vertical Team for sharing with us today an example of a learning team in action. As representatives of their various grade levels, they came together with student learning in front of them, thinking about how they could use their data about student performance to think about their own learning goals as educators, to actually engage today in some professional learning led by their math coach, who helped them think about how they can improve the rigor of math problems their students are engaging in. We also saw them take their own examples of problems and begin to think about how to adapt those so they can present more rigorous problems to their students. When they come back together and go into their own grade levels, they'll begin to look at actual student work to see whether or not their learning as educators is impacting their student achievement. And we know that when the math vertical team comes back together, that they will also begin to think about which long-term improvements they want to make in their teaching and learning so that the students at Stults Road are continuing to learn.